Good afternoon. So, by the title of this video, I'm going to be talking about mentorship, and very specifically millennials. This video idea was given to me by somebody by the name of I'm Not Going to Give You My Name on YouTube. Excellent name, by the way. Hope you're watching this. So, mentorship. What is it? Well, typically speaking, it's when a member of the older generation finds a member of the younger generation, and they give them either a short string of advice or they give them some perspective, some training, useful skills, useful knowledge that they have gained so that the younger person doesn't have to gain it through the hard sweat, toil, and misfortune that the older person typically had to. Now that is immensely important to someone's development, specifically not just because it equips them better for the future, because life is full of pitfalls and tragedy that if you can avoid, good. If you can't, it can destroy you. But more importantly, what it does is that it creates a sort of gratitude between the old and the young. It creates a link between the older generations and the younger generations. The younger generation now has a reason to care about the older generation when they become infirm and incapable. And the older generation can assure that the younger generation not only will be strong enough to carry out this task, but they will be stronger than they were at the same age, so that humanity can have a sort of incremental progress upwards, and the future can be a little brighter. Now let's talk about how that didn't happen, for the most part, with millennials. Now, everybody's experience is obviously going to be a little different, but I'm just going to paint a somewhat broad strokes picture from what everybody has been saying for the past 10 years or so. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, feel free to comment, call me an idiot, tell me I'm uninformed, and you know what, I'll gladly retract my statement if any of this is false. But, for the most part, what did most millennials get told as an advice? What was the sage advice that was imparted to them by supposed mentors when they were young adults, somewhere around 16 to 18, and they were trying to figure out what to do with their lives so that they could become strong, capable adults? The advice was, go to college. Oh, you don't have enough money to go to college. Well, that's okay. You can take out a loan. Now, really think about that, and then get back to me on how exactly that turned out for the vast majority of millennials who decided to go to college. If you look around, it didn't go so well. Not only was the value of the degree vastly deflated because now everyone had one. So if everyone has one, then the value goes down precipitously. Scarcity creates value, not just usefulness, but scarcity, because if everyone has something that's useful, then all of a sudden it's not quite as valuable because everyone can get their hands on it. So the degree itself and the education that came with it just wasn't what it used to be. Also, the price skyrocketed because there was all this government money floating around. So, as the price skyrocketed, the loans skyrocketed. And of course, through some trickery done by older politicians, basically the loans cannot be defaulted on. They can only be relieved if you die. And the common thread with all of this is that all of this treachery was basically done by the older generation to the younger generation for their financial benefit. And therein lies the problem. The problem is that most mentors to millennials all told them to go to college. And when they couldn't afford it, they told them to take on loans because they assured them you will be able to pay it back later. Now, whether or not this was done with malevolence or because the older generation simply looked around and they saw that all these wealthy people had degrees and made the necessary logical leap, that's up in the air. But the fact of the matter is that for the most part, a tremendous amount of millennials, which you can see through the riots and the online anger and the constant everything, hold a true hatred and suspicion of the older generation. I'm assuming because they feel betrayed and lied to. Specifically because they were sold a bill of goods, and that bill of goods turned into a toxic asset. They were told that something would set them free, only to find that all of a sudden they were chained and manacled to a debt that they could not even begin to pay off, and that all of the jobs they were promised would be available to them, well, they just didn't exist. Or if they did exist, they were already filled by older people. Or if they were available, they required 10 years experience in a job that used to be entry level. Companies used to train people for positions that now require a decade of experience and a master's degree. And again, all of this has changed not because of some gigantic malevolent force, but primarily just because, well, the scarcity of the degree is now gone because everybody got one and everybody was able to get one, well, because of the bank loans, and now the bank loans are these horrifying things that they can't get rid of. And so most millennials, or at least a vast chunk of them, they feel panicked, they feel trapped, and they feel that it was done to them by the people that were supposed to be their mentors, by the people that were supposed to be looking after them, by the people that were supposed to be helping them become stronger in the future, not weakening them, not preying upon their naivete. Because that's the point. Most people were convinced to take out these loans when they were teenagers. I still consider a 16 to 18-year-old a teenager, because that's what they are. I believe 18 ends in I believe it ends in teen. Now, a lot of millennials also manage to avoid the trap. Some of them manage to get their dream jobs, and others are getting by. But there's always that air of distrust, because the mentors basically, instead of training the young, predated upon the young. And when that sort of thing happens, it absolutely destroys faith in the system. Speaking of faith and mentors, I believe that churches used to be community centers for Western civilization, and that priests used to be considered men that you could trust. Used to be. And then what happened? Child molestation scandals in which the church actually defended the child molesters. They were under no obligation to, and yet they did anyways. This shattered the trust in the faith, and now nobody cares about them. They are in decline. They're in decline, and the only churches left that are actually doing better are, well, either fringe or they're picking up the absolute most destitute or desperate. So the problem is that yes, mentors are very important, not only to pass along ancient wisdom, not only to strengthen the young, not only to cause a general upward spiral for the human species, not only to strengthen the civilization and make sure that the younger generation will do better than the older, but mentorship is basically there to establish trust. You listen to the advice of somebody, and when it turns out that that was good for you, all of a sudden that person is not only knowledgeable, that person is somebody who has your best interest at heart. Now, I want you to imagine if there's an entire generation of people who took the advice of older people, and it all came crashing down on their heads. Not only did it come crashing down on their heads, but a small group of older people made a tremendous amount of money in the process. Now, what do you think that would do to the integrity of the social fabric? I'll let you figure that one out. Now, I love banyan trees. There's just something magnificent about them. As per usual, I'm going to end this with my normal advice. Try to eat healthy, get out in the sun every now and again, enjoy nature, exercise, and, as always, have a good day and live a good life.